It is now 3:05, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the February 13th Balcones Heights Economic Development Corporation meeting. All right. Thank you all for whoever is in the audience for attending today. First order of business is our public comment period. Do we have anybody?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Nobody scheduled to speak? Okay, thank you. We'd like, Boyd has a what a special privilege to do some announcements.
Madam Chair, also, if I may be recognized. Just to let you know that Professor Roger Enriquez will be here in just a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Just a matter of.
Madam Chair and board members.
Before you start, I wanted to say that we have established a quorum here this evening, and then we expect Roger to be here as well.
Yes. So Madam Chair and board members, as the mayor stated, we do have a new director for the board, Mr. Roger Enriquez. He's not here, but when you see somebody come in and sit in that chair, that'll be him. And so we would also like to take this time to announce we have a new city administrator. He's been with us for 4 days now. That's Mr. Andy Jocelyn. So I would just like to introduce him and give him the floor. Thank you.
Andy, would you like to say just a couple words of?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I appreciate the introduction. Floyd and Miss Lisa have been awesome, helping me out this week. So I am getting my feet wet with the city of Balcones Heights. I come with over 30 years of experience in municipal government, and I look forward to all the work that we have to do. Thank the mayor, thank Councilman Lecea for their support, and I look forward to a prosperous partnership.
Right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, for our first order of business, we have consent agenda items. The first item is the approval of minutes for the meeting held on November 14th. Does anybody have any questions on those minutes?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda items. That's if
Okay.
there's any other questions on it.
Here a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. And then the second item, and I should have done this as a full item. The second one is the monthly finance report that was, I believe, submitted in our. Let me ask.
Yes, ma'am, it was in the combined packet.
And at 3:08, want to recognize Mr. Enriquez arrived, excuse me. Okay, and so Madeline Slay has joined us online. Hello, Madeline.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to do this again.
Take the exit.
So we are approving both items on the consent agenda, both the minutes and the monthly finance report that was submitted by Mr. Messick. And it's on the back side of the last page of the agenda package. So I'll ask again, do I hear a motion for approval?
I'll motion.
Jeremy?
Second.
Second, okay. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now the second item is at our, I believe it was our last meeting, we have had 2 meetings where we did not have a quorum, so I believe it was at our last meeting. We had the chair resign, so we need to elect a new board chair of this EDC. So with that, I will open the floor for any nominations.
Madam Chair, if I may be recognized.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, if he would accept, would like to offer the chair position to Professor Roger Enriquez, if he will accept.
It should be her.
the wealth of information and urban studies. I don't know if anybody's got to read his background over at UTSA, but he's been there for 20 years now. And I think he would make a fine chair.
Thank you for that nomination. Any others?
Take a slight left turn to merge onto I-35 North.
I did not hear that.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
what's that, Madeline?
That's Miss Lake. I think she has a GPS on.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm in the car. Sorry.
Did she say she needed to pull over? Is that? Okay. She's, all right. So we have
No,
one.
I've got a driver. I'm good.
Okay. We have one nomination, Mr. Enriquez. Anybody else want to make a nomination? Not? I'll close the nominations. So let's, we're going to not, vote on Mr. Enriquez as the new chair. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. My only question is Clay is not here. And so does the new chair take over immediately or at the next meeting? Immediately?
I think he takes over immediately, but I mean, you can work it out between each other. However, Mr. Enriquez,
Be happy to defer it for purposes of continuity and make it effective at the next meeting.
I think that's good.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Well, we'll continue on, but please, we can co-chair here if you'd like. The next item is the update, discussion, and possible action for Wonderland of the Americas. We've got Sid Wise, who's the managing partner, and Denise Bush, the general manager, to give a report. Yes, we'll start with Sid.
Congratulations, Roger. We've got some interesting information. For some reason, I've only got 5 reports. 2, 3, 4.
And Sid, if you could pull the mic up just a little bit, make sure we get the recording.
Got it. The first item on the agenda happens to be about a lawsuit that was filed for wrongful death for a lady that fell on the escalator. Initial request was like $5 million. Travelers was our insurance carrier, and I believe they settled it for less than $180,000. We have liability coverage, including umbrellas and excess liability of $9 million. So we're covered under our liability policy, and we've got, and God forbid something like that happens again, we've got $9 million of liability coverage. It was clear that it wasn't our fault, and they settled it just to save legal fees and other costs, but it's over, and that's all y'all need to know about it, I guess, unless you have questions. Escalators and elevators. We have a vertical transportation problem at the property. We have 60-year-old equipment, and it's constantly in repair and constantly unavailable parts to fix the equipment. So at some time, and has in the past, that we've had all our vertical transportation not working. And fortunately, we've been able to keep the elevator in the food court operational, and we've got a backup of parts that we're going to warehouse for that one unit so that we always have some vertical transportation available. At one time, before we took out the 2 escalators in the middle, we had a single escalator at the south end of the property, and we were told that it could be repaired, and they were going to examine it to determine what parts were needed. Well, then they determined that the parts were not available that were needed, so that escalator is really not operational. We went to Schindler and we asked them for a price for a new escalator. And I have that information here and I'll pass it out. $1 billion. We can spend about $300,000 and replace the single escalator at the south end of the property. Good news is I went to Schindler and asked them to finance it, and they've come back, and I've talked to their director of national financing, and we can get financing on the escalator. I don't know what the exact rate will be, but it'll be prime plus 1 or 2. It won't be 18 or 20%. And I don't know the term yet. It probably will be 5 to 7 years. But I'd like the EDC to approve the purchase of a new escalator on the south end of the property, assuming that it is being financed 90% by Schindler's financing arm or contact.
Okay, are we taking these one at a time? For Madeline's purposes, Madeline, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just want to recap this because I do have a question about it. The escalator model itself is $262,000. Extras, which have not been defined, are $4,800. I'll leave that alone for now. The engineering and permit drawings are $26,400. So 10% of the escalator is for engineering and permit drawings, and then another $25,000 for miscellaneous or contingency. I presume this is a pretty cut and dry in terms of the engineering piece of it.
The engineering piece could be less since we don't have to build a hoistway. That's really the cost to get the existing escalator out and the necessary partitions around it to protect it and things like that while the installation is going on.
That's under miscellaneous and contingency?
Correct.
Okay, but the engineering drawings,
Don't have a specific on that yet. That was a maximum number, in my opinion.
your opinion? Is it?
Well, that's the number that was given to me is a maximum number.
Is that number from, sorry, this is Madeline. Is that from Schindler or is that from a separate engineer?
Madeline, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you speak up, Madeline?
Yes. Is that number from a separate engineer or will Schindler provide the drawings?
No, that'll be a structural engineer and architect that have to, whatever it takes to get the city permit or the state permit.
Okay.
So that's on our side then, not on the Schindler side?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. And that's an up to, that's a maximum?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Madeline, I just wanted to clarify those numbers. So it's a total of 318,000 with the base cost of the actual escalator at 262. Basically 10% for the engineering permit, 10% for contingency, and then a modest amount for extras. And so the financing is available through the company itself?
It's through a contact that the company has. I'm not sure it's the company itself, but they're providing the source, and it would be 90% of 262.
Okay, and is that at a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Pardon me?
The rate?
Rate is, the quote has been given me is 7.8%. It has not been tied down yet, so I don't want the committee to vote on a 7.8, but it will be no more than prime plus 1 is what I've been told. And if it's changed or different, I'll bring that back to the board.
Okay. All righty. So let's go ahead. You need action on item B. We'll go ahead and do that one. Do I hear a motion?
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
Okay. What sort of service agreement or what sort of warranties are you receiving as a result of the?
Very good question. I don't have the answer, sir. I can get that for you. I'm sure whatever the standard warranty is that Schindler offers on new equipment, I would think in the 3 to 5 year range, parts and labor, but I'm not sure.
3 to 5 year? Okay, I thought you'd mentioned 10.
Denise, we can
previously.
check on that.
No,
Just take.
Also, my understand, the escalator's not worked for a while. Right? I mean, it's
That escalator has not worked for a while, and I'm told that parts are not available.
got it. And has there been some deferred maintenance fund or something that where you plan on getting the 10% from if it's financed?
We have operating capital sufficient for that, and we put $20,000 a month into a reserve account, and we have something like $200,000 in that account right now.
Got it.
Madam Chairwoman,
Yes, sorry.
I've got a question, and the gentleman didn't sign up to speak, but I'm requesting respectfully if he can ask his question on our agreement, I guess.
A question on this item?
Yes, on this
Okay.
item.
Please.
Okay, yes, sir. Can you identify?
If he can
yourself,
come up
please?
to the podium.
Yeah.
Juan Lasea, 223 Ronald Lane. Just going back through some of the notes and the memory that I have on the escalators. If I'm not mistaken, the city had agreed to take apart the first set of escalators with the parts being deferred and being utilized to repair the second set of elevators. Does that not materialize or what?
Apparently, as I understand it, that did happen. And it was determined that those parts are no longer able to be used, and that escalator is obsolete. Is that correct?
Right. But just for clarification, I think the way it was presented that the parts for number one were going to be utilized to repair number two. But if that's not the case.
That parts, yes. That number two, that ability to do that was determined infeasible.
Okay, so the parts that were in number one were pretty much never going to be available for number two.
Apparently.
Okay, and just because that's the way I understood that it was sold to us, that we were going to take the parts from number one to rebuild number two. But if we knew from the beginning that the parts were never going to work, then I think we were given false information.
And I don't know at what time point that determination of those parts that were able,
right.
if it was done.
And it's
after
going to take a
that.
little bit of research, but I just wanted a little bit of clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me respond to that. That was absolutely the plan, to take those escalators out, and they were eyesores anyway, and use the parts to service the other 3 escalators. And when they took them down, they found out they were so worn that they couldn't be used. So that was, you didn't know until you took them out to find out the condition of them. But you're 100% correct.
Thank you.
Anything
Just out of
else?
curiosity, so the escalator that will be removed, the Schindler gets that escalator and that takes the parts
I
away?
mean, well, we'll certainly try. The one that parts cannot be obtained for is an Otis escalator. And I don't know if the other 2 are remaining. One's Otis and one's not. I don't know. I don't know the brand of the 2 in the food court, but I'm told that the food court escalators will be operational tomorrow. They had to wait for a part to come in to do those. So at least we'll have the vertical elevator and the 2 escalators in the food court, but that's at the opposite end of the property. And so that's why I'm recommending that we add the escalator at the south end.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions from the board? All right. I'll entertain a motion to,
Madam Chair, I'll move to go ahead and approve
okay,
this
second.
stated item. I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. The item for the estimated escalator cost recap passes. Next is the Denny's real estate taxes.
This is an issue that we learned by the tenant that we didn't really realize we had, and that is that the AT&T pad that was adjacent to Denny's and the Denny's pad were on the county tax rolls as one pad. So for the last few years, Denny's has been paying the taxes on the AT&T pad as part of their taxes. We've authorized the general manager to separately plat those two pads so that in the future that cost will not be incurred. But the number was about $40,000 that she had paid on behalf of the property over the last 5 or 10 years. So we made her a deal on renewing her lease options and gave her, 3 5-year options, subject to a redevelopment clause, by the way. And we've got a renewal of the options, or an extension of the options. So she would exercise the first 5-year option now and have 2 5-year options remaining. And they're at market rate. They bump up each year. So we didn't have to come out of pocket with $40,000. We covered that basically in the renewal options.
If I may,
So this is part of the,
Madeline has a question, I believe.
oh, yes, Madeline?
I'm sorry. So who would be responsible for paying for the replatting? Because that'll be about 20 grand of engineering plus any city fees. Who pays for the replatting?
The question,
Additionally, are the utilities separated out that it, as it would be if we go to plat it into 2 new properties, they're going to want a separate service for each pad.
Madeline, I didn't understand the question, but
question is who is going to pay for that replat? And are the utilities going to be separated at the time of replat?
are we doing what separately?
The utilities?
Well, the utilities have always been separate. So it's just a matter of replatting the track, and Wonderland would be out that expense, which with NBC Engineering will be minimal. Do we have a cost yet for that? It'll be under $10,000 for the replatting cost, I would think.
Okay, so this was never discovered prior to this point?
I didn't know it. And the only reason we found out about it was Denny's found out about it, I guess, by doing some evaluation.
So when you previously leased that AT&T pad site?
We demolished the AT&T pad site probably 10 years ago. And so it's been vacant all that time.
It was leased prior to that?
It was leased prior to that.
Okay. So those taxes weren't part of that lease at that point? Or?
I don't recall, but from what we now learned is that it's been one plat. I mean, one plat for the Denny's and the AT&T pad together. So we're going to separate them now. But I didn't realize it before, and I don't know if Denise realized it or not either.
These types of things happen all the time.
Apparently what happened is 15 years ago, when we started talking to VIA about the multifamily, we put them together, and we never undid it, I guess. And that's what happened.
12 months.
Madeline, did you have a question?
No, sorry. I was just going to say this type of thing happens all the time. It's not unusual, just so everybody knows. Right now I'm dealing with a piece of property that is 6 different parcels that the city of Oilton owns, except there are roads deeded through the middle of it. And as we're replatting it, we're having to go back and do that. There's just a lot of times these things just happen. You don't know about it.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
I think she was commenting that this does happen a lot. It's not a anomaly,
Okay.
this situation. And I think she's bringing up a lot of maybe residential property that it happens in particular. And so was who derived that number? You said $40,000?
We had a tax consultant in Houston, one of the largest in the state of Texas, do an evaluation and pursuant with her lease and pursuant with the cost. He did a study of what taxes were owed to Denny's.
Okay, this is for how many years?
It was probably 10. I don't know. We've got the breakdown of all the cost.
Okay. Okay, are the other two items, D&E, Hobby Lobby, parking structure, and tenant updates, those are not action items, correct? Those are,
That's correct.
okay,
Just information.
so let's,
The Hobby Lobby, well, it's basically the Fred Road garage, has had some concrete spalling, and that initiated Denise to get a structural engineer to take a look at the problem. We don't know the extent of the problem. We don't know what's wrong, but hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have a report for you on the structural issues that the Fred garage may have. The spalling was obviously caused from movement. Christine made a good comment about learning the structural support of that property to see if a floor could be added to it, whether it's for parking or for retail, and we'll look into that also at the same time.
just for clarification, that comment was made in a previous partners meeting that was held prior to this
Yeah.
meeting. Was clarify for me, the Denny's Real Estate, are you asking for action on that, or is that a briefing?
No, that's a done deal.
Okay. And then lastly, the tenant updates.
Yeah. A18 is a space in the property that was leased by Bear County Hospital District. And prior to that, it was leased by Career Point College. When Career Point College went out, Bear County Hospital District decided they would use it for a few months, and they did. We have a separate real estate company, Stream, and an individual by the name of Lee McKenna that is leasing that property. And because it's such an important part of our operations, we want to offer a commission, an extra commission incentive, if you will, to the real estate brokers. So A18 should bring in between $500,000 and $600,000 a year in rent. Well, all that money falls to the bottom line of cash flow. And I'm proposing a $50,000 fee extra to the broker if they get it a lease within 60 days, and then 40,000 within 90 days and 30,000 within 75, and then on down to $10,000 extra. So we're trying to stimulate the market with the brokerage community to go out and find the right tenant, because $600,000 of rent's a big deal for us. So I'd like the board to approve a commission structure starting at $50,000 down to $10,000 as an extra incentive to the broker that brings us in the lease in the specified time. And that lease is still subject to your approval and our approval as far as who the tenant is and what the rents are and things like that.
The square footage on that.
40,000 square feet.
So if for any reason, is this commission bump tied to that entire 40,000?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, if they can come in half, it's not applicable.
okay. Any other questions?
Okay. The last issue that I'd like to bring up is that Weitzman Group out of Dallas has been our retail leasing agent for the remainder of the Steinmart space and the Santikos space, which are primarily the two retail spaces we have available. I've terminated that after 1 year and proposed to hire another leasing company, and just really informing you of that under standard terms to lease the remainder of Santikos space and the remainder of the Steinmart space. That's just an informational.
That's different than the agent that you just mentioned.
That's correct. Different company, different specialty.
Okay, any questions on any of those items?
Thank
Okay,
you.
seeing none, thank you so much. Next item is a discussion and possible action on what we're calling stay the course or exit strategy. By Mr. Messick is going to do a presentation on potential options.
Madam Chair and board members. No presentation for this. This is something that was really put on the agenda for last time. And it really had to do with more of what Mr. Albert Lara had discussed with some potential firms here as far as developing a evaluation of mall property. And so he kind of ran into a wall with that. And so it was his decision at the time. And I carried over as I followed after him for a few weeks as the interim city administrator to just put this on hold until we had a new city administrator come on board. And so with number 4 here, we're talking state of course or exit strategy. That's a pretty broad statement made up of a lot of steps, right? And that was just one of them. So initially in January, that's what this discussion was. And so it's kind of carried over, but it's kind of morphed into something bigger now. And obviously we had a 1 o'clock meeting with the partners to address this because this has been, of course, the question and the concern for the city and for the board. What is our philosophy here? What do we want to do? Do we want to stay the course or do we want an exit strategy? And we kind of had a good discussion at that at 1 o'clock with the partners and with some of the members of the board here. And so as far as what was said there, I will just say yes, that this is still a question that has to be asked. As far as the specifics of it, though, I think as a lot of that was confidential, that maybe should be discussed in executive. But just for the update, that's where we stand. And if you have any questions or if there's something that you wish to bring up.
Are there any questions in open session that anyone would like to ask? And thank you, because it's bringing back, yes, this has been.
Yeah, for many, many
we're
months.
At a little different point.
Yes.
Back then, I believe it was basically, can we get a general idea on valuation?
Correct.
And it
correct.
may morph into a much bigger discussion, and especially with the new city administrator here, that will follow on. So, okay, thank you.
Madam
sir.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may be recognized, I just wanted to brief the board that this conversation took place with the new city administrator. He's very well aware of what we're going to be doing. This is a pinnacle and primary objective that we're going to be trying to achieve and provide feedback to the board as soon as possible. The mandate from the board, if y'all remember correctly back then, was let's try to get a value of what our asset is, what we own, to determine what our position is in terms of strength and negotiation for any future potential investors or developers that might be looking at this property. So we are on board with doing that now. This is going to be primary, and it will be on the top of the list of our city administrator's tasks to accomplish. So hopefully we should get back with you very quickly. If we have to call a special meeting, I'll call one and see if we can get that taken care of right away and then respond back to you accordingly and with the information necessary.
Okay, thank you for that
Mhm.
information.
Mr.
Right.
Madam Chairwoman, this is a top priority, I know, for the city council, the EDC, and I'm taking it very seriously. I'm formulating a plan already after our meeting today to be able to present something to you with my recommendations.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to move to number 5, is discussion on the city's economic development projects, the current projects in Mary Spence.
Madam Chair, the list is not available to share with you. It was not shared. Our community development team has hit a shortfall, and we did not get the updated list. So the last one that you received would have been for the January meeting that you had, and it was just an update on the projects that are taking place in the city. So I can inform you that the Methodist Hospital, the 2 projects that are working there are still continuing, going and following their timeline well. We have the business park that's on the access road of Interstate 10 that is also continuing. Walls are going up, and they're anticipating a late spring opening for the facilities there. And then we only have a couple of properties, home that are vacant currently. So on that line, it's also updating pretty well as well too. So nothing new to add on that we've had as far as new projects go as of right now.
Thank you. Anybody have questions on any of those? All right. The next item is if we're going to go into executive session. Oh, hello, Clay. Is there anything in terms of updates that we need to go into executive session? I know you.
Before we go into that, Madam Chair, if I may just real quickly, in updating on the city's economic development projects, just so you know, we did have a meeting last month with some of the vacant lots that we have here in the city. And we got some of those owners of those lots to meet with us at the office that we had at the annex office at the mall. We sat down with them. We went through some of the zoning things that we had, and we talked to them as to what they were looking at to putting on some of these properties. And they were very receptive on, we'll go with any ideas you have. Bring us brokers, bring us people that might want to develop our properties. So the ones that are available is the one that's over here on this side of Crossroads Mall Road. There's where the old barbecue place used to be at. We're working on seeing if we can get that occupied. She's receptive to doing anything with that property and the one next to it. And then we discussed also the old Furniture Lax place here on the corner of Hillcrest. We pretty much know that she doesn't want to sell at this point right now. The son is more receptive in a different direction, but right now we're working with them to see if we can get some ideas as to what they might want to do there. And the other properties over next to the Denny's that we talked about as well. And so we're looking at the Norma's Taco Place on Fredericksburg Road to see what we can do with that. I'm going to be following up with Rose Anderson on that to determine we can get another meeting set up again to firm up and then come back to you guys to see what we can do to help them in the event we can attract some potential developers there.
Okay. And
So
just
we're
for
trying to stimulate the environment.
for clarification, who is we?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was, I think Councilman Lysia was there, Councilman Sines, Councilman Burton. There was a couple of brokers that were there. Mr. Lotta was there. I was there. See if I miss anybody else. I think we had Mr. Charles Winkler from the P&Z, chairman of the P&Z was there. There were several representatives of the city, and Mrs. Spence was there, I think, as well. Did I miss
So-
anybody?
so
Mrs.
was this a-
David
so-
Sellers.
David Sellers was
Yes.
there
Yes.
as well, the other council.
This was an informal gathering
Right.
that we created to be able to bring the members of the planning and zoning team, the city council members, and then we had an investor. We have a property owner here in the city of a vacant property,
Mhm.
and then another property owner that's here in the city as well too, and a developer as well. And we wanted to be able to provide them the opportunity to speak with each other, talk with each other in a more informal setting and not formally here with the dais coming through. It gave them the opportunity to share what their vision was,
What?
the two property owners, what they're kind of looking to do, and be able to share why they
Nobody's paying
wanted to
attention
make
to
those
this.
happen. And it was a successful meeting. It was great to be able to sit down in that informal setting and be able to have those conversations. Each of the members came out of that with a better understanding of what each side would like to see happen.
Okay, great. Thanks for that
May I-
clarification. Madeline?
I'm sorry.
Are you?
Yeah. I just want to say that there's a whole lot of back history to this project. And I worked with the current owner, and yeah, you're right, she doesn't want to sell. But we have done site studies of how to do a multi use property there, including how to do the parking using the slope. So I would love to be involved in any talks with future developers since I've already spent countless hours analyzing the property.
Absolutely.
Okay, did you hear that?
Yeah, let's make sure we keep her in the loop there.
And Miss Madeline, so the informal meeting that we had was not the family there of the Lax property of 4545. They were not a
No,
part
they
of this
weren't present.
meeting. So it was two different property owners that we have. One is in the residential area and one is a commercial area that we had. So I know we've mentioned 4545 or the Lax property, but that was not one of the topics that was discussed at this particular meeting. But yes, we definitely would keep you in the loop on if
No,
we have
that's
any
cool.
further.
I just didn't know if y'all understood the history I have with that project. And it's long and it was expensive and it was free. So, so anyway, just let me know if y'all need anything. I'd love to add to it because I have studied the site extensively and I even have plans for building there.
Okay, so the point is if there's some informal meetings in the future with regard to that property. Certainly Madeline would like to impart her extensive free knowledge of.
Absolutely.
All right. So the next item is executive session. I want to get a handle on it if there's anything to discuss in executive session.
Madam Chairwoman, I would ask that we hold off on the executive session for a later date. I know Mr. Benford has to step away to another meeting. I know we were in the owner meeting earlier. There was a lot of valuable information. Floyd recommended that we may go into that, but I think there's a lot of loose ends that we need to tie up before we present to the entire board as far as the project that we're talking about at hand. So
your recommendation is that we do not go into.
yeah, my
that there's no
recommendation is that
yeah,
we're
if
not
there-
ready at this point.
Yeah, if there's no items, we don't need to.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
aren't any items. So we will bypass number 6 and 7. So next one is discussion and possible action on items discussed in executive session. There none. So we will go to the announcements, comments, and requests. Number 9 is an executive director update.
I'll just give a quick update. Thank you to Mary Spence. Do you have anything that you'd like to share as far as the executive director report? If not, I've worked successfully with Mr. Benford on other projects in other municipalities, and I look forward to sitting down with him in regards to the project at hand to come up with a recommendation that's going to be viable for the city. As we talked about, it's not just necessarily the project, but it's the entire city and our goal for what we want it to be. So I look forward to that. And Ms. Spence, anything? Well, that's it on the executive director.
Okay.
Thank
We're
you.
lucky to have Clay. I ditto.
Yeah.
All righty. Future agenda item suggestions.
Madam Chair, I'd like to recommend that we put into the next agenda for bylaws to be amended to allow for the creation of alternate positions so that we can maintain the continuity of our meetings in the event some of our members can unfortunately not make the meetings, that we amend our bylaws so that we can allow for substitutes to take those positions during the time they're not able to make it, so we can continue with the meetings and have those meetings.
Mhm. That was my item as well, so I was gonna request that. We do have online, obviously Madeline's taking advantage of that today. But we have had the case where we've had 2 meetings now that we were not able to make a quorum, and we don't want to have that happen in the future. Out of respect for people that are attending those meetings, presenting at those meetings, as well as having the business of the EDC move forward in a timely manner. So with that, I would entertain a motion for us to, on the next, well, we don't even have to do this as a motion. That
We don't
at
need a
the
motion.
next-
We just,
At the next agenda, that we place an item to look at the bylaws for the intent of placing alternates for the membership. And the,
Madam Chair,
yes.
would it be possible to, I don't know if it's an agenda item necessarily, but is there a rules subcommittee, or how do you guys normally handle that so they can report out on because probably there's a number of different things that perhaps the rules should be revisited as it relates to in-person versus online and the idea of a substitute or what, all of that. So is there a group a subcommittee of the group that looks at that? Can that be done so that they can have something basically prepared
Like a bylaws
as
committee.
opposed to like a bylaws committee?
I would say that the additional imposition upon this board has not been something that's been pursued to date. I think that the existence of the EDC itself has been the 3 to 4 year timeframe, and the work that you're describing has typically been undertaken by the executive director of the EDC, and not imposing more so on your membership who is already committing a significant amount of time. If you guys want to do that, you certainly can. I do want to be mindful of the Texas Open Meetings Act limitations that are going to be applicable to what you may or may not be able to do to facilitate ongoing business. And happy to revisit that to make sure you're getting as much flexibility as you can. But to answer your question directly, there is not a subcommittee of this board that handles that with a recommendation. It's through the executive director.
I just didn't know and wanted to ask.
Sure.
So typically it would be the executive director or the handled through those channels.
And so Clay, following on that, if the intent is to add alternates, what is the best way to do that in terms of process?
I'm not sure that alternates to the board to allow composition of a quorum is permitted under Texas law.
Okay.
we need to look into that and determine that. And I'm assuming that Mr. Jocelyn is taking over the role of executive director for the EDC, so we can talk about that.
Okay. So if you could report back on the next meeting.
In case anybody can't make it, we have somebody to help out if it's doable.
Will the virtual option always be available? I think that could help.
Say that, can you repeat?
Will
that?
the virtual option be available every time? And can it be distributed to the EDC? Oh.
Right. The virtual meeting options were available during COVID, but the governor has retracted that authority as being compliant with the Open Meetings Act. And so we can have participation, but my knowledge, it doesn't allow, we can't utilize that solely to convene a quorum. And so we'll look into that. What we have, the way we've addressed this in the past when Lorenzo Nastasi was here, is there is a delegated universe of authorities that the executive director is permitted to exercise, which allowed a lot of work to be done outside of a board meeting. With his retirement and the vacancy of the position of the executive director, all of that business has been reverted back to the board, which has been compounded by the inability to convene a quorum. That's how we addressed it operationally in the past. And I would expect that as Mr. Jocelyn gets more comfortable and familiar with the situation, that he will also become more comfortable in exercising duties that will allow business to occur in between meetings and not be so hamstrung as we have been.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, to rephrase my question, then let's go ahead and just do the necessary research to determine what options are available to us in order for us to conduct business in the event that we have any absences on the board. Okay? And then get back with us and let us know what powers we have to do that. And we'll take the necessary steps to adopt. Thank you, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
regardless, that item will be on the next agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there other items that we'd like to see? Okay, seeing none, and please, 354 that Ms. Kwan left. Any announcements from board members, staff? Exciting things, fun things? Okay, well, with that, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I look forward to having Mr. Enriquez
Carries.
run the next meeting. Thank you.